ahead and announce the benediction and send these folk home because, you know, the sun is going down and it's getting late. They need to go home so they can get themselves some shelter and some food. And Jesus said, no, don't send them home. I tell you what I want you to do. You feed them. Oh, Lord. And then when you look in this text, Jesus said, no, you feed them. As a matter of fact, he asked Philip. He said, Philip, where will we find bread that these may eat? And Philip said, Lord, let me tell you something. We got 200 denarii in the budget. And it's not enough to feed them. Now, 200 denarii was 200 days worth of wages, because a denarii was worth 1 day's of wage. And Philip said, look, man, working 200 days, we still can't feed these people. And Jesus, I need to talk to you because, see, I know, Master, you compassionate, you care about people, you want to help everybody that you see. But, Master, I need to tell you something on tonight. You need to understand that it's not in the budget. We don't need to be sitting around trying to discuss how we going to handle this. We're not going to try to live above our means. You just need to understand that tonight we just can't have it. How do you think we're going to feed all these people when what we have is not enough? And Jesus uses this problem that the disciples are facing as an opportunity to develop their faith. So he teaches each of us that we need to trust him even when it appears that what you have is not enough. Because when you look at the movements of this text, we find, first of all, when what you have is not enough, God will test you. Yes, he will. Verse 6 says, this he said to test them. He said to Philip, where we're going to get enough bread that these may eat. Jesus asked Philip a question of faith. He was trying to draw out Philip's faith because Philip was a seeing is believing kind of guy. You had to show Philip. You remember when Jesus called his disciples, he called Philip. Philip went to his brother Andrew and said, man, we found that prophet, the one Moses wrote about and the prophet spoke of. He's Jesus of Nazareth. And Nathanael said to Philip, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? And Philip's reply was, come and see. Because Philip was a seeing and believing kind of guy. In chapter 14, when Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father. Don't just talk about it. Show us the Father and we'll be satisfied. Jesus had to get in Philip's grill and said, Philip, when you seen me, you've seen the Father. You see, Philip was a seeing is believing kind of guy. So Jesus is trying to draw Philip's faith that right here. He got to work on his faith. So he says, Philip, what shall we buy bread that these may eat? See, Jesus asked Philip a question of faith, and Philip responded with facts. Yeah, he did. Some of you are going to kiss them. He said, Lord, wait, let me tell you something, Lord. He said, I calculated what it would cost to feed all these folks. And according to my analysis, we can't afford it. We ain't got it in the budget. But Philip didn't understand that Jesus was asking him that question to test him. See, Jesus said these things to test him. That word test is the same word used in Genesis chapter 22 when the Bible said God tested Abraham's faith. He tested Abraham to show how much he really trusted and had faith in God. Listen, sometimes during these lean times, God is going to test your faith. I wish I had a witness. Sometimes maybe what you're going through ain't nothing but to tell somebody it ain't nothing but a test. And he tests us for a number of reasons. First reason why he tests us is because he wants to help us have a fuller understanding of who he is. I'm in this text in John's Gospel. He records 7 major miracles that Jesus performed, of which he called signs, because they were pointing to a greater reality about Jesus. And the first sign in chapter 2, he turned water into wine. The second sign in chapter 4, healed the nobleman's sick son. In chapter 5, healed the paralytic at a pool. In chapter 6, we have the fourth sign. The gospel is helping us to see that they had been witnesses. The disciples had been witnesses to miracle after miracle of what Jesus had done. They had seen, yet they still did not fully understand who Jesus was. You would think that Philip would have said, Lord, I don't know how you're going to do it, but based on what I've seen you do in the past, I know you can pull this off. How is it, child of God, that we can see God do miracle after miracle after miracle in the past, but we won't trust God in the present? I mean, how is it that after all the doors he's opened, after all the ways that he's made, all the things that he's done, something ought to tell you that if God did it for me then, he can do it for me now. Because in chapter 6, what Jesus is trying to tell him is, I am the bread of life. And whatever you need, I am your Jehovah Jireh. Let me see if I can make that plain, because I want to help somebody understand on the night that God can be trusted and he can provide for you whatever it is that you need. See, that I am, that is the title that God used to describe who he was to Moses when Moses said, Lord, you want me to go down here and talk to these people? Who should I tell them has sent me? Because see, they don't want to name God, and God say, tell them I am that I am. I wish I had somebody. But if you notice something, the second time that he asked, that Moses asked him, and he gave Moses his name, he didn't say I am that I am. He just said I. Oh, I wished I had a prayer church. And I had to ask myself, why would he not give him I am that I am the second time? And why would he only say I am the first time? And Bishop Beveridge said it like this, that what he wanted Moses to do was to go down there and tell the children of Israel, I am had sent me. And when they asked, who is I am, start passing out some pieces of paper. And when you pass out the pieces of paper, tell them to write I am on the front of the paper, and whatever they need me to be, write that on the back of the paper. Somebody go catch that on your way home. If they need a friend, I am a friend. If they need food, I am bread in a starving land. If they need water, I'm water in dry places. All I'm trying to say is that whatever you need, God can be that for you. He'll test us to see if you're going to trust him. Now understand, Philip flunked the test, but he wasn't the only one, because Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, went out and found a little lad who had 2 fish and 5 barley loaves, and said, Lord, here are 2 fish and 5 barley loaves of bread, but then turned around and said, but what are they among so many? In other words, Lord, it's not enough to feed these folks. And perhaps that day, the only one who passed the test was this little boy. I mean, perhaps at the beginning of the day, his mother had fixed him a little a meal lunch, 2 sardines, and 5 hamburger bun-sized pieces of bread. That's what barley bread was. It was bread of the poor folk. It was an inferior bread to wheat bread. His family could not even afford good bread, but they just had a coarse barley bread. It was just enough to fill his little belly.
All right.
When he got hungry, and in the midst of all of that faithlessness among his disciples, I can imagine Jesus said, son, come here.
Yes. All right.
Give me your lunch so I can feed these people. Now stop right there. And let me suggest that the little boy faced a test as well. Because that little boy could have said, my mama fixed it up for me. Or he could have seen what was coming and did like I do with the students sometimes. When they see me eat my lunch, I just cough on it and down my foot, down my mouth. Hey, Mr. Isaiah, why you do that? I said, y'all be big. Or he could have said, no, Lord, this is just enough for one person. And had he not given Jesus his lunch, he would have missed a miracle. Come here and let me ask you something. How many miracles have you missed? Because you would not trust God with your situation. And all I want to suggest is that there are people who miss miracle after miracle after miracle because you're not trusting God with what you have. Let me suggest to you that you ought to trust him because not only will he test you, God will teach you. For he himself, verse 6, knew what he was going to do. He said, I'm going to use this as a teachable moment. Philip, where shall we get the bread that these may eat? This he said to test him because he already knew what he was going to do. Listen, ain't that just like God? When you don't know what to do, he already knows. I wish I had somebody here. But he's just trying to teach Philip that your shortfall does not exhaust my supply. Philip said, we don't have enough. But Jesus is teaching Philip and us that our shortfall don't hinder his supply. Don't believe me? I told you about that widow woman when Elijah the prophet came to her when she was gathering sticks and told the man of God, I'm gathering sticks so that me and my son can go eat our last meal and die. Some of us like that. We think that we don't have any hope with what we have. And listen, the man of God said, since you put it that way, fix me something first. That's just like a preacher, ain't it? And somehow that woman trusted the God that was in the man. And she said, does not make sense, but I'm going to trust the God that's in the man. And she gave to the man of God, and the Bible says God did not let her meal run out or the oil run dry. Now watch this. God did not fill the meal barrel, but every day that woman went out there, she had some meal in her barrel. All I'm trying to say is that God wouldn't, I'm not trying to say that he's going to make you a millionaire. What I am saying is that God is going to make sure you have enough to make it from day to day. Because he's trying to show you that your shortfall does not hinder his ability to supply your need. He's trying to show you that when you give, the Lord will show you the mathematics of a miracle. Verse 9, I'm getting ready to go home. Jesus said, listen, make the people sit down. And they sat down in a grassy place. And the boy gave Jesus his lunch, and Jesus lifted it up and said, and blessed it and fed everybody. They got as much as they wanted. Listen, child of God, that's the mathematics of a miracle. The mathematics of a miracle is math that does not make sense. You see the crowd of 5,000 men that were there that day. I want to tell you, that was not including the women and the children. And they are hungry. And the only food available is a little boy's sack lunch. And the boy gave Jesus his lunch. And Jesus lifted that lunch up, blessed it, and started breaking fish and bread. Fish and bread, fish and bread, fish and bread, and fed everybody that was in the wilderness that day. How can that happen? That is the mathematics of a miracle. That does not make sense. Listen, can I bring it to your kitchen table? Have you been able able to give your tithe on a little meager salary and still keep a roof over your head. I'll tell you how. It's the mathematics of a miracle. How have you been able to give your tithe and still keep food on your table? I'll tell you how. It's called the mathematics of a miracle. You see, mathematics of a miracle says that when it's in your hand, it's too little to make ends meet. But when you transfer it from your hand to the Lord's hand, little becomes much when you place it in the master's hand. You see, the mathematics of a miracle is what Malachi said when he said, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, and I'm going to open up the windows of heaven, pour you out a blessing, and you won't even be able to receive it. All I'm trying to say is, what do you believe? It's because God will take care of you. Verse 12 says, so when they filled, when they had eaten, when they were satisfied, when they had eaten all that they wanted, and the Bible says that they were full. Notice Philip had said, Lord, if we had 200 days of wages, what would that be among so many? It would not be enough to give them a little bite. But Jesus said, I'm not trying to give them a bite, but I'm trying to fill their bellies. And the Bible says when they were filled, because that little boy was willing to trust God with his lunch. The Bible says not only were his needs met, but over 5,000 other folk got their needs met too. And all I'm trying to say is that when we learn how to trust God like this little boy, I want you to know that the Lord will take care of you. When you learn how to trust God and it don't make sense, God will take care of you. I heard the Lord say, and my God shall supply all of your needs. Whatever it is, God will take care of you. And the Bible says not only will he take care of you, but the Lord will treat you. Because verse 13 says, Jesus said, gather up the fragment and go get the fragment. In other words, gather up all of that extra. Can the church shout extra? In other words, help me preach. Somebody say extra. Gather up the extra fragment. And the Bible says they filled 12 baskets full of fragments. That's called extra. Fragment, child of God. This is a miracle on top of a miracle that God had performed. One more lunch fed 5,000 folk and 12 baskets were left. That's called extra. And all I'm trying to say is every now and then God will supply you an extra blessing. How do I know? Because how do you explain it when you got a job that you didn't even apply for? Call it extra. How do you explain it when folk try to keep you from getting a promotion, but you got it anyway? Somebody say extra. How do you explain it when girls get scholarships? Somebody ought to say extra. How do you explain it when you find a gift card with $100? Somebody ought to say extra. How do you explain it when you got Social Security, bankrupt, and back pay? Somebody ought to say extra. How do you explain it when you get benefits, find money that you wasn't even looking for? Somebody say extra. How do you explain it when your bills are paid off? Somebody say extra. Debts are demolished. Extra. All I'm trying to say is the Lord will give you extra. He's giving you some extra right now. When he woke you up, that was extra. Started you on your way, that was extra. The air you breathe, that is extra. Clothes I wear, that is extra. Car I drive, that is extra. Anybody here tonight knows that the Lord has given you extra. If the Lord has blessed your life, you ought to wave a holy hand. If the Lord has blessed your life, you ought to say thank you, Jesus. If the Lord has blessed your life, help me preach right here and say yeah. Say yeah. I know he's all right. I love him, I love him, I love him. I know he's all right. One of the reasons I love him so is because he gave me extra on one dark Friday when he died, and they put nails in his hand. That was extra. And when he stayed there all day Saturday and all night Saturday night, that was extra. But the real extra came Sunday morning when he got up with all power in his hand. What do you do when what you have is not enough? I tell you what you do. Take it out of your hand. Put it in the Lord's hand. I think I told you once before that it depends when it comes to the outcome of anything. Oh, what makes the difference is whose hand it's in. Oh, I think I told y'all before, you better put it in the right hand, because if you got a basketball in my hand, it's worth $30. But you put that basketball in LeBron James' hand, worth $30 million. Somebody's going to catch that on the way home. Golf club in my hand is an embarrassment, but in Tiger Woods' hand, all I'm trying to say, it just depends on whose hands you put it in. If you would take what you have out of your hand, put it in the Lord's hand, watch God make it extra. God bless you, and may He keep you with our prayer.
That was a masterpiece. That was a masterpiece. It all equates. I preached it. The Lord wants your lunch.
Oh man, I like that one.
I preached it. Little becomes much in the hands of Jesus. It all equates to the same thing. Is whose hand. He gave you a good amount of it. I can't even dribble a basketball. One day I saw Kelvin when he was a little bitty boy. It was a Jade's party. That young fella, he wasn't big as, he wasn't as old as the twins. Well, how old was he?